Yes.
North Korea.
Yes.
North Korea.
North Korea. That by itself is a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the situation in North Korea, as you all have concluded, is a very serious one. There is no question that we have to do everything that is required to ensure that North Korea doesn't pose a threat to the United States or our allies, and doesn't have the ability to deliver a nuclear weapon to the United States or our allies. This is a very complicated question in my view, because North Korea, everyone thinks that North Korean dictator is crazy and irrational. I would suggest to you actually, the North Korean regime has very rationally concluded that the best way that he can protect his regime is to have nuclear weapons. He looks at what happened in Iraq, he looks at what happened in Libya, he says, one gave up nuclear weapons, one didn't have it. What's the best way to make sure the same thing doesn't happen to my regime? Having nuclear weapons. And so his desire to have these, while it's unsettling and destabilizing, is not totally crazy. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is there's not a good military option in North Korea. Even if we were able to strike the nuclear sites, which would be very hard to do successfully, even if we were able to do that, the North Koreans could launch almost instantaneously conventional weapons into South Korea. The population centers in Seoul are enormous, and even with conventional weapons, they could do devastating damage to South Korea. Not let alone if they were able to use a nuclear weapon. So there's not a good nuclear option. We have to, I think, continue to work with the international community. I will give the President credit. At the UN, he was successful, or Nikki Haley was successful, in bringing to the UN Security Council sanctions that even China and Russia agreed to that are substantial and I think will make a difference. We have to keep pressure on China, because China does have the ability to really solve this problem. So much of trade and so much of the supply chain for the North Koreans comes from the Chinese. The Chinese, however, are in a very kind of awkward position, because on the one hand, they don't want Kim Jong-un to start a nuclear war because it's right on their border. On the other hand, their biggest fear is a unified Korean peninsula. They don't want North and South Korea to come together and be allied with the West, because that's right on their border. So China, wants just enough tension to keep things like status quo, so there's a North and South Korea, but not enough tension that you're going to have, a nuclear, a nuclear conflict initiated by North Korea. So we have to force China to make a different calculation and understand the danger of North Korea using a nuclear weapon is greater than the danger of a unified Korean peninsula, even though I think that's not likely to happen. But it's complicated. I think it requires very smart, careful, thoughtful, diplomatic efforts. I worry that the President's very bellicose language is unhelpful. I think we need to turn down the rhetoric. I mean, we are become accustomed to the North Korean dictator saying crazy things. His father did the same thing, but we managed to contain that. I think what we don't want is to stumble into a conflict, which can happen when people say things and you're surrounded by a bunch of advisors that maybe don't give you perfect advice. So I think, my hope is the President will tone down the rhetoric, which he seems like, as of today at least, he did a little, and continue to redouble really our efforts to work with the international community to exact a real cost to the North Koreans if they continue, and really work hard to make sure there's a diplomatic resolution that prevents North Korea from having a
supporting the South Korean president in terms of talks with North Korea. The South Korean president has asked for talks with North Korea. Do we stand behind it?
I don't know that the President or the administration has taken a position. They did say some kind of
No, I said
I don't know that the administration has taken a position.
Yeah.